Okay, let's do a little bit of a shared launch of a verb, not a noun. A verb, not a noun. Made. What is made? Made is an effort to do networking. Networking. It's not an effort to build a magnificent new network that's going to solve all the problems or create something new or pretend to. This idea of made is nothing new, and it's not meant to replace what is good. It's meant to offer a resource to what there is in civil society, in this movement of ours that we co-own, and we co-build. And we don't just co-build it here or co-own it in the global forum. We co-build it together on the ground at home, in our own countries, in our own regions, before and after and well beyond the Global Forum on Migration and Development, or the People's Global Action, or the World Social Forum on Migration, or anything else. So MADE joins civil society, joins us, we hope, in a way that we've been asking for since the first Global Forum in 2007 in Brussels, the first Global Forum in 2007. Now, am I just imagining that, or was there something there worth remembering? Well, here's the memory I have of that Global Forum in one particular moment. I know folks like Oscar and others were at the Global Forum that year. It was a one-day meeting of civil society. Nothing like this or the last few years. One day, first Global Forum. If you remember, Sophie and others, if you remember, the original idea that came out of the first high-level dialogue was to create a global forum on migration and development that would have how much time for civil society? None. Zero time. The first global forum, the plan was no civil society time at all. And it was the chair, the government chair that year, Belgium, that said, oh, we'll have some civil society time. We'll have one day before the governments meet. No common space, no nothing, no 2 days, one day. And at the end of that day, in civil society meetings, there was a session like sessions we have here, except the name of the session there, in the first year of the Global Forum, the name of the session was The Future of the Forum. The Future of the Forum. And it was civil society, us, meeting in a small room, like the rooms here perhaps, even smaller that year, to talk about what we thought the future of the forum would be. And one of the real heroes of civil society work over the years on the ground in countries in Asia, as well as regionally in Migrant Forum in Asia, as well as internationally in things like the World Social Forum, the People's Global Action, and the Civil Society Days. Rex Verona was the civil society chair of that session on the future of the forum. I was the rapporteur for Rex. And I remember a crowded room talking about what do we think of this new global forum and civil society in it, and what do we recommend for the future. Future, in 2007, the future was 2008, 2009. Already that's a long time ago. But what was the chief recommendation from the civil society participants in the room? The number one recommendation, I don't know if people who were there might remember. The number one recommendation, Seifel, you were there? I don't know who else was there in that future of the forum, 2007. It was, we cannot just have these gatherings once a year at a global level. So you remember that and others. That was 2007. Right away. This is maybe good. It's good to meet together. We got it. We have to build the international community, but we have to meet at a regional level, at least. And then someone raised their hand and said, yeah, we also probably need to meet at national levels. We need to come together on these issues because they're tough. They're hard issues. And because even then, a lot of people around the table were saying, you know, we got a lot to say to one another, and a lot of it's the same on substance, on message, on recommendations, on possibilities. And we know it's not just words. We know it's not just here. We know we have to bring it home. And so the number one recommendation was, we have to do this. We have to get together regionally. Not just this in the process of discussion, but we have to come together as civil society regionally. So that was 2007. In 2008, civil society space opened up to 2 days in the global forum, but there was still no real formal process of coming together regionally. Now, Rex Verona, William Goes, so many folks, Ellen Sada, in the Migrant Forum in Asia constellation, did a lot of the work regionally, convening, bringing people together, not just talking, but thinking and sharing and planning action and strategy. And in a few other places, a few other networks, the People's Global Action was meeting on occasion nationally and regionally, but trying to figure out, how do we do this more sustainably? How do we do this more sustainably? So, 2009, 2010, we also started to see in this process, and so many people in those global forum meetings kept talking about another regional problem, and that was that even in the international conversations, there weren't enough civil society actors from some regions. Africa was continually underrepresented. Not enough organizations and actors from Africa for lots of reasons. Not enough meeting in intra-Africa either. Central America, Latin America, South America, underrepresented in some of those years. And so the question was, if we're really trying to be a global movement and conversation of civil society, how do we come together more? And how do we put a regional power into this conversation, a regional reality? And all along, and right to now, well, what's the principal question perhaps for civil society? In this process, People's Global Action perhaps, and Civil Society Days as well, is there a before and an after? Do we have enough possibility to do work before and after these events, or are we still too much captive? Not individual organizations, but as a unity, do we have enough possibility to act on what we say? Responsible ourselves. Our recommendations aren't just the governments. They're not just the governments. We're not that small-minded, and we're also determined to be part of the answer. We are the story. But is there enough before and after? So, not with any brilliance, really, although my colleague from ICMC Europe is in the back who put all her brilliance into this proposal. We saw in ICMC, working with the International Advisory Committee this year, it's 33 of the leading organizations around the world, we saw the possibility of some funding from the European Union to go for strengthening civil society in some of these processes, for deeper analysis our way, for more regular engagement across the regions, and before and after the Global Forum. So in 2011, the very day of the Global Forum in Switzerland, and you all know this in your own organizations, you have those deadlines that come on the worst possible day, and it's a deadline. You have to meet it or it's over. The deadline came for us to file a proposal to build some kind of program of regular work among civil society networks that already exist. Just a regular habit, a regular practice of meeting, regionally and thematically. These projects looked specifically for regional organizing, specifically in Africa, in Asia, and Latin America, Caribbean. A little bit in Europe to connect the analysis and bring it into the European Commission, among others. So specific regional focuses in those three big regions. We wrote the proposal also to focus in thematic ways on labor migration, specifically now on recruitment, on global governance of migration, one of the hard questions. How do we think about that as civil society? And on diaspora and migrants in development. And so we put this proposal in, and we actually put a second proposal into the European Commission for the same type of work with the broad network, and we hoped the growing unity of civil society. Again, not to replace, but to resource, not to control, but to connect, to do this. The connecting that we talked about in the opening plenary, the movement and momentum in an effort at greater unity and depth. So that's what this MADE project is. That's what it's a verb. It's networking, and it's meant to bring a before and after to the work we do. Now, Colin Raja from the Global Coalition on Migration can talk about the value of regional work, but so can probably 100 of you from the most recent experience before the high-level dialogue in New York, when there was something like 21 national and regional preparatory consultations of civil society to do some thinking and to do some planning and to do some converging towards what became what became a very strong 5-year, 8-point plan, a focus and a message of unity and determination and multi-year work together. And so Colin will talk about that in a minute. Yeah, where does the story go, and where do we turn it over? And where do we finally go for some food? We put the proposals into the European Commission, and we waited. We waited, and we wound up on the waiting list on our proposal. We were not approved. You see some of the names of some of the groups up there, but it's the Migrant Forum in Asia as a partner. It's the Scalabridian Network as a partner. It's Cordaid as a partner. It's the African Diaspora Policy Center as a partner. And I don't know if we have a list of the partners to put up. But existing networks, global networks, networks of advocates and practitioners on the ground in these movements, doing some of this work, years and years of building unity, doing regional thematic focus, part of this project. But we sat on, and we thought we had a very strong application, but we were put on the waiting list. And it was only in December of 2013, after the high-level dialogue, that we got word that the proposals were approved. And that's what the MADE network is about. Regional work, thematic focus, an open building of the unity with existing networks on these matters of migration and development, well beyond the Global Forum on Migration and Development. Connecting to the Global Forum, connecting to international processes, but connecting very much to whatever's happening at the regional level and whatever can happen because of this work together. And of course, connecting at the national level. Anything regional is national. We're national. We touch down nationally and locally. So that's the MADE network. I'll stop and turn it over, I think, to Colin, and then we will close and we'll go for something together, good drink together. But the offer, the resource is there. It's co-owned. It's co-owned. That's what's here. Again, not to replace anything, to join the movement, as an offer for the movement, built by the movement. So that's what it is. We're not trying to sell anything. We're trying to put it out. Do I sound like a salesperson? Sorry. You know, I guess I'm inspired by that image of the mall this morning. I'm the. Yeah. So that's where we are now. We were a little bit surprised when we got a message from the European Commission, who has funded this, who will be part of Common Space on Wednesday, I should say, in the panel it talks about the post-2015 development agenda. And so I'm not going to read the whole message, but I thought in particular on that issue, on that very important issue, the piece of this message is especially important. This is what they say. They say the UN high-level dialogue of October 2013 resulted in the adoption by unanimity of a declaration by the governments on migration and development, which recognizes that, quote, human mobility, this is a quote from the declaration at the high-level dialogue, human mobility is a key factor for sustainable development which should adequately be considered in the elaboration of the post-2015 development agenda. It goes on. Maybe this is important to consider. The European Commission continues. The UN high-level dialogue also provided an occasion for a number of stakeholders to develop proposals for strengthening different aspects of migration governance. Here's the line. In particular, civil society organizations proposed a 5-year action plan for collaboration covering issues including the rights of migrants, labor mobility, partnerships, and development. Okay? Goes a step further. The Commission believes, this message says, that the important work done on the traditional topics of migration and development must be continued. However, we also wish to see a broader approach which pays greater attention to South-South migration and is based on, and here this is a direct quote, a more comprehensive understanding of the impact of migration on economic and social development. In this context, the MAID program, they say, will enable civil society organizations to come together to focus concretely on key thematic dynamics of migration and development. That's the message. But here's our message, and here's the last words I'll offer. This is made. This is made by civil society. It's what we make of it. So Colin Raja, one of the guys who makes things happen in the movement.
Yes, you do. I'll go last. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not the rock star that John is. I need the security of the a little bit.
And I was actually planning to see.
I don't know if many people realize this. Today, there's a report that's being released. I haven't seen it anywhere. I heard it somewhere around. But if you get a chance, it's a report by the, it was commissioned by the UN University, United Nations University, looking at the past decade in, John, I'm talking.
Oh, sorry.
What a rock
What
star.
did I say?
What a rock star. Sorry.
Sorry, Colin.
The report is basically a study of the last decade of the global governance on migration. So it kind of has looked at what's been transpiring in all of these things. And that's a significant portion that's dedicated towards global civil society. I think there's only 3 parts. The second part, we're one of 3 key actors. There's, of course, states, there's international organizations and agencies, and then there's civil society. And then the third part is entirely dedicated to us, global civil society, and the role that we play in global migration governance. So it's a really interesting study, and they interviewed a number of us. In one of the early drafts of the report, we got to review it a little bit. The drafter indicated that, in the early days of the Global Forum, civil society's organizing around this was haphazard. And I said, haphazard? That doesn't sound like us. And I asked John, I asked a few other people who were interviewed, it's like, did you say this? And did you say this? And we're like, no, we never said that. But so it seems like maybe on appearance, outside, it might have seemed haphazard. But to us, I think to us, we were very clear. In the early days, we weren't haphazard. We were going towards the same goals, the same center, but coming at it from different angles, basically. And the different angles began to converge. As our organization got better, as we became more sophisticated, as we became more mature in how we wanted to get the goals accomplished, because that was the target, we came together. There was more synthesis, there was more cohesion, and a higher level of organizing. And that is another part of the report initially that suggested that, yeah, and as the organizing has developed, up to this point now, it really shows the complexities of civil society organizing. And again, that word sort of struck me as like, no, I don't know if complexity is the right word. It's not that word, complex. But I think we're much more sophisticated. I don't know if anybody knows anything about holograms. Holograms, this special projection thingy. I don't know a whole lot, but my understanding is that holograms are very different from, say, a photograph. A photograph, you take a photograph, you cut a piece out, that piece is gone. But the rest of the photograph is still there, clear as day as it was before. And you cut another piece, that piece is gone, but the other part, and then you keep cutting until it's all gone. A hologram is very different, completely different from that. A hologram is like multiple layers of the same thing. It's like, millions of layers, basically, of the same thing that creates this holographic picture. And if you take one out, the whole picture is still there. There's no piece that's missing, but the picture becomes blur. And the more layers you take out, the blurrier it gets. So I think, if I'm to draw any analogy about global civil society organizing and the development of it, it's like a hologram. The more layers we add, the better picture we get, the clearer it becomes, and the more real it becomes. I want to congratulate ICMC and the partners of the MADE project and network, because I think this is a very important layer to what we're trying to do. I think it's really critical at this juncture to develop our sophistication, take it to the next level. And I think it only enhances that global picture. It only enhances our ability to reach the goal, to reach the target. And I think it's really critical at this point in time that we not only look at events, even the annual event, as critical as that is, but we look at how we can, regionalize these much, much more, and multiply the effect that happens both in terms of what I always call bubble up, getting the information, the data, the experience of what's really happening on the ground, so that we're not disconnected from that, but actually are rooted in that. And secondly, the trickle-down process also happens better, more effectively, more efficiently, and that any kind of deliberation that we undertake together, any kind of decisions, any kind of strategies, any kind of actions that we take collectively is better undertaken by everybody on the ground. All the people that we represent, our communities, our members, our delegations, our extended network and network of networks. So this is an important layer to make that happen and to regionalize the process. And then secondly, is still also to focus on key specific areas where we think we can achieve something in the immediate. I think so often as civil society, we've kind of we're sort of been trained and socialized to think that we only achieve our role, or our primary responsibility is that to articulate the ideal and to constantly repeat that ideal. And that's absolutely right. We need to do that. That's a core part of who we are and our responsibilities, because we understand probably better than any other actor what is going on, what people are facing on a daily level, and what needs to happen, the solutions, the answers. I think we really believe we have that. But while we're doing that, our sophistication also has to increase in terms of how we get there. And I think sometimes we say that without the extensions of getting there. What are the strategies? What are the practical negotiations? What are advocacy tactics? How do we take this message to governments that are not there, but here? How do we follow that route? How do we bring it there? So I think this is a really critical piece, and I think I want to applaud, the conveners of MAID for coming up and addressing those two pieces specifically. So we congratulate you again, ICMC, partners of the MAID project and network. We look forward to working closely with you, and I think all of global civil society stands to benefit a lot more from this, and I think we can only look back in years to come and say, wow, this was another important, sophisticated layer in making the global civil society hologram happen. Congratulations, and thank you.
So, thank you, Colin, very much. Colin, I mentioned organized a lot of the regional processes that took place with civil society before the high-level dialogue last year. That's too easy to say. Huh? Colin organized with many of the partners in the room something like 7 regional processes in about 2.5 months. About 2.5 months before the high-level dialogue last year. It was incredible. And I don't know if there are folks in the room who were part of that, but I think we ought to give a round of applause to Colin. Colin did that as head of the Global Coalition on Migration, and with funding from, I think, some funders in the room, the MacArthur Foundation, the Open Societies Foundation, and Boncomer Foundation. And I know we appreciate that funding to civil society for precisely this kind of talent and organizing. I didn't mention all the partners. Weiss is going to take us through just the last portion of the conversation and maybe open up for questions. I want to mention the partners I didn't mention. Caritas Senegal, the International Network for Migration and Development, and the NGO CordAid, a development NGO doing this work, civil society side, rights-based, migrant-centered. What a great initial set of partners. With that, our architect from ICMC and really the one who brings it all together, Wismas.
Thanks, John. And I'm really going to keep it super brief because I know we've had a really long day and we're all looking forward to having some drinks and relaxation. And that's exactly what we're planning to do after this formal part of the launch event. And basically, my task is only to explain how you can get involved. As John explained, the MAID program it's a network in the making, and it's made by you. It's made by the partners, it's made by ICMC, but it's very much made by civil society globally. If civil society doesn't get involved, and you are already involved, it won't work, while we're adding layers to the hologram that Colin explained. So how can you get involved? I'll give an answer, but it's at the same time a question to you. How do you want to get involved? How do you want to organize? In a way, you are already involved. It starts here and now. You're here at the Global Forum, coming together. And the reality is that without this MAID program and the funding of the European Commission, many of us would not have been here. The reality is that we as civil society have to do our own fundraising, have to fund the GFMD Civil Society Days from the donors that are willing to put money in this. And the European Commission has been a great support of putting this year's Global Forum together with the support of supporting the MAID program. So you are already involved because you're here. So as John explained, the MAID program it's basically a framework, first of all, to stay in touch after the GFMD, before the GFMD, beyond the GFMD. Because the next time we will meet, or some of us, I hope, in this setting, in a GFMD setting, will only be late 2015. So late 2015, 1.5 years from now. And there's so much in the meantime that we are working on and that we can work on together and that we want to change. Of course, the post-2015 agenda is one of the key priorities that many of us are working on. That's moving. It's moving now. We cannot wait 1.5 years until we get together globally again. But there are other issues that are moving and where we would like to see change. Restructuring the recruitment industry is one of the issues that the MAID network and a specific working group will be working on. So it's a framework to stay in touch beyond the GFMD. and it's a framework to try and do advocacy together. And I think both Colin and John have referred to the 5-year 8-point plan that civil society put together last year, which was a great inspirational practice of how civil society can get together and agree on a set of priorities that then is brought to governments. And it's quite amazing if you look at through the statements of governments from the high-level dialogue or speeches that were made today by Sweden, for example, how often this 5-year 8-point plan is referenced to and made wants to facilitate, together with other networks, that kind of steps, that kind of advocacy. So practically, how can you get involved, or how can you express that you're interested to take the next step with us and the partners? Well, very practically, there's a flyer lying around in the room here and later on in the room back there, where there's a rip-out page that you can fill in, and you can just leave your name and your address, and you can indicate what specific theme or what specific region you're interested in. So there's 3 regional networks in the Americas, in Africa, and in Asia. And then there's a Europe chapter that liaises with European Commission and European policies. And then there are 3 thematic working groups, one specifically focused on labor mobility and recruitment, one on the role of diaspora migrants in and for development, and one looking at the difficult question of global governance of migration and development, specifically related also at the moment to the post-2015 process. So you can fill in this flyer, leave your details. There's some room for comments if you want to, if there's other issues you think that we should really focus on. So that's one step. The other step is what we're going to do after we take questions is we'll break. There will be drinks. There are tables in the back of the room that are organized per region and per theme. And we invite you to go there. The partners that are organizing the different regions or the different themes will be there to answer your questions, to listen to your ideas, and basically to get in touch with each other. And the third way at the moment is to go to the website, which is madenetwork.org, and to fill in also a questionnaire there and leave some information about your interest and what you would like to work on. I think I'll leave it there. The only thing I wanted to add is that the European Commission statement that John just referred to, there are copies out here with the full text if people would like to read what the European Commission said in addition to referring to the high-level dialogue and the 5-year 8-point plan. And I think we can open the floor for questions, and then I have one final announcement to make about the drinks, but I'll wait for that for a second. Thanks.
Good job. So who wants questions and who wants drinks? We can also ask and answer questions at the drinks table or anytime in the next day or so. Yeah, Manfred, yeah. I don't know if we have a microphone in the... Yeah, Sophie, thanks. When my microphone was on before, Weiss was saying, John, why? You walk around a lot when you talk. And I said, I used to be a lawyer. But, the problem is I can't think and walk at the same time.
I hope this GFMD will not be a delusion like the previous ones, but starts very well because it is the less militarized that I have ever seen.
Sorry, my microphone's on.
Thanks for that, I think. Thanks for...
Is it still on?
Yes. One sec. Yeah. No.
Is Australia also included in this? Because I've seen the 4 continents, but I haven't seen Australia. Is it covered under other continent for this global forum network? Thank you.
Thanks. We'll take all the questions at once and then respond. Thank you for that. Sorry, it's hard to see. Yes.
In French, please. In French. En français. Donc,
Oui, tout à fait.
Samir Abi Togo. Donc, je défends la cause francophone à fond donc, dans cette conférence qui est très anglophone, je m'excuse. Et j'espère qu'un des points forts de cette nouvelle plateforme qui vient de naître, c'est qu'on parlera à la fois bien français, anglais et espagnol. Que toutes les diversités linguistiques seront respectées, s'il vous plaît. Parce que souvent, nous sommes très noyés dans le monde anglophone et on n'arrive pas à s'en sortir alors qu'on a beaucoup de choses à partager. Seconde chose aussi qu'on espère vraiment, et malheureusement c'est une lacune comme on a beaucoup de réseaux, c'est que les réseaux n'arrivent pas à apporter des réponses concrètes à des besoins immédiats qu'on a sur le terrain. C'est très fondamental. Là, je donne un exemple tout simple. Depuis 1 an et demi, on est dans un processus de rédaction d'une politique migratoire au Togo, renforcée par l'Union européenne, certes. Sur beaucoup de schémas, d'étapes, nous ne sommes pas d'accord avec la démarche de l'Union européenne. Imaginez que nous, on est en train d'écrire un profil migratoire et finalement, on nous a dit d'arrêter parce que la France, c'est à partir de la France qu'on nous a écrit un profil migratoire pour le Togo. Donc, par rapport à des choses comme ça, on aurait besoin de plus de soutien pratique d'autres acteurs de la société civile de d'autres pays, notamment le Maroc, le Sénégal, mais on n'a pas souvent d'échanges. Je pense qu'on a besoin de beaucoup plus d'échanges pratiques dans ce réseau. J'espère que ce sera pris en compte dans la construction. Merci.
Merci. Les 2 questions là. Thanks.
Je vous remercie, John Bingham, et de cette occasion que vous nous avez offerte, parce que on a peiné. Je m'appelle Abdel Tahzine du Maroc et j'ai accompagné à peu près le Global Forum et on a cessé de peiner pour un peu avoir des réseaux. On est inscrit dans disons le réseau africain, mais le problème, on n'a pas de feedback. En tant que réseau, représentant des Marocains, de tout le monde, les Marocains du monde comme on l'appelle. Et aussi, là, dans le cadre de ces sensibilités qu'a proposé notre ami sur la question de la francophonie, on voit aussi que l'arabe est absente dans ce discours de diversité. Et là, je profite de l'occasion pour lancer à nos amis du MENA. C'est la première fois qu'il y a autant de représentants du MENA qui sont là. Je leur dis qu'il faut qu'on se réunisse ensemble pour un peu irriguer les uns et l'autre réseau et avoir surtout un certain dialogue dans le cadre où le MENA, c'est une zone de transition et aussi d'émission et aussi d'accueil. Et merci.
Merci. Brice, yeah. And maybe there's one last question and thanks, Brice. Merci.
Brice Monod, ma question c'est ce réseau Europe. Apparemment le thème est bien ciblé, je ne sais pas pourquoi. Alors expliquez-moi, c'est quoi ce réseau? En même temps, c'est thématique sur les autres continents, mais au niveau européen, de quoi ça parle?
Merci. Okay, we'll take those questions and any other questions after the session and the drinks and tomorrow and beyond. And I would invite the partners also to respond to questions around drinks and forever, to whatever questions there are. These are the questions we have asked ourselves and tried to answer among the partners. We've had meetings now for the last couple of months and this weekend. I'm not going to answer all the questions myself. But again, the questions on la francophonie ou les langues, les questions sur les langues, this is a multi-language group of partners. And in our meetings already, we've had Spanish and French. In the diaspora group, for example, yesterday, in the global governance group, some of the partners are Francophone. Some of the partners are from Latin America, Mexico, and Chile. Most of the work, like here, most of the language is in English, but that's something we're wrestling with. This is the civil society effort. It's a part of the movement, and we have to figure out language, often with interpretation as much as possible, sometimes with written documents translated in either direction. And we know we don't do that well enough, and we probably never will. So we have to wrestle with that. But the best way to wrestle with that, like in any policy type of process, is to have all the people at the table, the languages and the cultures and the regions at the table, and we figure it out together. And sometimes the Anglophones, shut up. And sometimes the Anglophones, get the headphones and don't write the documents. We have to figure that out. We're one movement, one planet, but plenty of languages. No, no other answer than that. Watch how translation happens this week, interpretation happens this week through the process. And let's see what we do well and what we don't do well and what we have to do different. Because of course language is more than just communication. Language is the culture, is the story, is the people. We know that. We have to do that better. And I think our partners have that. Not only language, but the story and the reality. Australia, I don't know how to answer this question, but it's related to the one that Brice asked. Which countries, which regions are in or out of this project? Again, the funding stream came as it is. Our organizations know when there's a funding possibility, there's usually a design, and you have to figure out whether you can match the design and stay who you are. Is the design adding value or not? These projects were focused towards Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Caribbean. We never forgot, and our set of partners here and many others, we never forgot that we needed to do much more work in those regions. We knew in this whole movement, not just the global forum, that the regions of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, Caribbean also struggled sometimes outside of available resources. They were usually last on the list. So we jumped, our ICMC Europe office jumped at this and said, this looks like a funding stream and a possibility and a resource that doesn't happen very often. So countries in the north were mostly excluded, mostly, not entirely, but mostly. The focus was on the so-called south, on developing, we know that language, huh? And we were glad to see it in the sense it wasn't usually there. But we also said to our other funders, Open Society Foundations, MacArthur Foundation, who have helped support the full planet engagement of civil society here, including diaspora organizations with low budgets in other countries or other NGOs with low budgets. These foundations often stepped in and said, yeah, you know, we're here for the full movement, not just for one region or the other. So that's the financial answer. That's the program design answer. But the global thematic groups, in particular, on labor and recruitment, on global governance in 2015 development, and on diaspora in development, they're open to everybody. And where is diaspora? Mostly at the moment, but in a lot of the North countries. When we look at the number of delegates here at the Global Forum, civil society delegates, why are the numbers from Europe and some of the North countries so high? In great part, it's because that's where a lot of the diaspora groups come from, thank God. So there is that full planet engagement. Europe, there, you know, I think it was mentioned, and my colleague, the head of the ICMC Europe office is here. Europe has a chapter, a particular function. We described it where, and we wrote it. We wrote it into the project to translate what the thematic groups and the regional groups are saying that the European Commission should hear. We were very clear about that. You know, this and the program was to convey that message. So that's I think that's a fair answer. Petra, that's a fair answer? Why don't you take a mic? Can we have a microphone over here, please? Thanks, Sophie.
Yes, very, very short. I think that it's the criticism of many of the regions are very correct to say that Europe tends to be very Eurocentric. And the issues that are at the table are very often always translated in a very European context. What we would like to do, but it's of course very modest, the activities that we will do as a chapter is getting some of the regions to have the possibility to explain their situations at European level, and then we're looking at European Parliament, Commission, other platforms that can really have a better idea of what's happening on the ground, because that is really happening too little.
Thanks, Petra. Thanks, Petra. So that's the head of our ICMC Europe in ICMC office in Europe. Thanks, Petra, very much. I think that's the questions we have for now. Now it's time to have a little party. So let's go have some drinks in the back. Let's go. We're going to have some entertainment provided by Caritas Sweden in the room just beyond. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks for your attention. Thanks, partners.